A vlogger recently shared that they can no longer afford meat, relying solely on vegetables to get by. Due to the ongoing tariff crisis, meat prices have surged so much that it's become unaffordable for many. The price of a cow has increased by over 2,000 yen, making beef a luxury that most people can no longer enjoy. On April 19, a vlogger in Ningbo, Zhejiang Province, posted a video explaining how the price of raw materials has skyrocketed, with beef being the hardest hit. China imports about 15% of its beef from the US, and prices have risen by 15% across the board. While they haven't raised prices at their restaurant yet, they're struggling to keep up with the increasing costs and may have to switch to local beef. They shared that their supplier called to inform them that brisket prices had gone up by 10 yen per kilogram, an increase of 9%. This vlogger pointed out that cities like Ningbo, major trade hubs, can't escape these price hikes. The restaurant industry's profit margins are expected to shrink, leaving many in a tight spot. They sighed, saying, "I can only tighten my belt and get by." A beef seller admitted that their business is barely staying afloat, with beef sales down. Most restaurants use frozen beef, which has also seen a price increase due to a reduced supply of domestic beef. Many cattle farmers are holding back supply because of the tariff war and market instability, which worsens the shortage and drives prices even higher. A restaurant owner shared that the tariff war has made life incredibly difficult for those in the restaurant industry. Their main ingredient is beef, and due to the trade war, the price has increased by at least 30%. This owner said, "We've always sold our meat at a low price with low margins, but now I can't handle a 30% increase. If the prices continue to rise, it will become unbearable." Since President Trump imposed tariffs, beef prices have been fluctuating daily. Now, even a calf costs thousands of yen. A vlogger shared that they get dozens of calls daily just for beef, as prices change constantly. It's become more expensive than gold. This vlogger, who used to buy American Angus beef, said the price has gone up by 30%, calling it ridiculous. As part of the ongoing tariff dispute, China retaliated by imposing tariffs on U.S. agricultural products such as soybeans, beef, and pork, with tariffs reaching as high as 125%. These measures have sharply increased the cost of ingredients for China's restaurant industry. In 2024, China imported 408,000 tons of pork from the US, representing 18% of its total annual imports. However, the 125% tariff has dramatically raised the price of imports. The tariff impact stretches across every corner of the restaurant industry, affecting everything from beef and pork to seafood. A vlogger running a self-service restaurant in Xi'an shared how the price of small chili peppers rose to 42 yuan per kilogram, with vegetables and fruits also becoming more expensive. Bananas, which once cost 50 to 60 yuan per box, now go for 70 to 80 yuan, and prices are expected to rise further. Initially, the vlogger didn't see a connection between the trade war and food prices, but a wholesaler explained, as long as it's related to the economy, everything is affected. Meat prices, particularly beef, have gone up significantly. The vlogger questioned how fresh-cut beef hot pot restaurants or popular barbecue buffet restaurants would manage, suggesting they may need to raise prices or pivot in other ways. The restaurant business in 2025 looks set to be even more challenging. One barbecue restaurant owner shared that Trump's tariffs have had a major impact, especially on their secret recipe beef belly. Their costs have doubled because they use American beef, and with the tariffs, prices have skyrocketed across the board. Even seafood has been affected. A vlogger running a seafood hot pot restaurant said lobsters used to be the cheapest but now cost double since the trade war began, leaving them with no choice but to sell in bulk at lower profit margins to avoid losing loyal customers. Another barbecue restaurant owner mentioned that not only Australian beef, but even domestically produced yellow cattle, pork, and scallops have increased in price. They used to buy them for 7 yuan per kilogram, but now the price has risen to 12 yuan. The fluctuations in beef prices are putting immense pressure on the supply chain. A supply chain manager explained that their annual beef procurement exceeds 5 million yuan, with beef brisket being their main selling item. However, the price of beef has gone up by 23.5%, which continues to strain operations. In retail, Sam's Club has raised the prices of US imported beef and steaks. A user shared that Sam's Club beef short ribs had risen from 220 yuan to 320 yuan for a 700 kilogram box, increasing the price per kilogram from 420 yuan to 460. These increases have hit Chinese restaurant businesses hard, especially those focused on American fast food and high-end Western cuisine. Mr. Li, the manager of a Beijing steakhouse chain, shared that their procurement costs for high-quality beef have increased by nearly 30%, forcing them to adjust menu prices. However, customers are very sensitive to price hikes, making business slower than before. The owner of a barbecue restaurant in Fujian admitted that the tariff increases had caused all beef raw materials to rise by 10 to 20%, which forced them to replace one of the beef options on their menu with tender beef or pork belly. Even restaurants that don't directly use US imports are still feeling the impact. The rising feed prices in China have pushed up domestic pork and poultry prices. Some processing companies have reduced production, leading to further instability in the supply chain, which drives up operational costs for restaurants. A Chinese restaurant industry publication noted that fluctuations in raw material prices are being transmitted through changes in tariffs, with beef, pork, and soybeans being the most affected. China is the world's largest importer of soybeans, with over 80% of its demand reliant on imports. The US is one of the largest exporters of soybeans globally, but due to the tariff war, China stopped purchasing US soybeans and corn earlier this year, increasing imports from Brazil and other countries. Despite this shift, the soybean oil market remains tight, and the rising price of soybean meal is affecting the livestock industry and, by extension, the restaurant sector. One analyst noted that the rising cost of feed has already started to create a cost spiral in China's livestock industry, which will affect meat prices and, in turn, the restaurant industry. The feed industry is also feeling the strain of US tariffs, with costs rising for ranchers who rely on imported alfalfa. With imports from the US blocked, Chinese ranchers will need to rely on domestic or alternative protein feeds, which will further increase prices. This is compounded by droughts in key wheat straw-producing regions, putting additional pressure on the supply chain. Rising prices across the board are causing strain in the restaurant industry, with some restaurant owners pointing out that even raw materials like corn, wheat, and fertilizers are becoming more expensive. The price hikes of just these raw materials will cause prices to rise throughout the supply chain. As the prices of basic ingredients like meat and cooking oil increase, residents are noticing the impact on their grocery bills and meals out. The trade war has created a double crisis for China's restaurant industry, with rising costs and tougher market competition. Many businesses are struggling to survive, and those who can't adapt will likely fail. With 750,000 new restaurant businesses registering in the first 3 months of the year, existing restaurants are finding it harder to compete due to aggressive promotions and low-price deals. This has led to a chain reaction, with restaurants facing even more challenges ahead. In China's major cities, where rent, labor, and ingredient costs continue to rise, the restaurant industry is under immense pressure. High-end restaurants that rely on imported ingredients like US lobster and steak have been especially hard hit, with many closing down since 2024. According to the China Cuisine Association, the national restaurant closure rate in 2024 increased by 15% compared to the previous year, with at least 12,000 closures. Consumers are also becoming more price-conscious, leading to fewer diners and lower sales for many restaurants. As the prices of basic ingredients rise, everyday meals for residents are becoming more expensive. People are feeling the financial strain when dining out, with some families now spending hundreds on a meal. Restaurant businesses are struggling to adjust, and consumers are tightening their belts. With the dual pressures of rising costs and increased competition, the future of China's restaurant industry looks uncertain. The soaring raw material prices are not just affecting restaurants, they are also impacting other industries. Fitness enthusiasts, for example, are noticing the price increase in protein powder, as its raw material is imported from the US. The rising price of protein powder is just another example of how the tariff war is reaching every corner of the economy. Experts suggest that the trade war may continue for the foreseeable future, with no end in sight. As the Chinese leadership digs in, believing that they can endure while the US continues its lavish lifestyle, the reality is that food prices are becoming unaffordable for many. If people can no longer afford food, businesses across industries will collapse. Ultimately, the fallout from the tariff war could bring down not just the restaurant industry but the entire economy.